The MMA world thrives on chaos, but sometimes its stories strike a note far deeper than championship gold or backstage brawls. One such story is unfolding around retired UFC fighter and Olympic wrestler Ben Askren, who recently revealed he is being forced to auction off a deeply personal item to help pay off a staggering medical bill. For a man who once stood atop the wrestling world and made waves in multiple MMA promotions, this revelation is both heartbreaking and eye-opening. But Askren's personal struggles weren't the only headline shaking the MMA world this week. Arman, one of the UFC's most promising lightweights, delivered verbal haymakers against Ilia, the newly crowned featherweight champion, and Khamzat Chimaev, the enigmatic Chechen-born star. Arman, never one to shy away from confrontation, tore into both fighters in a heated interview that has fans buzzing and social media exploding. These two narratives, one of hardship and humility, the other of pride and provocation, reveal the full spectrum of modern MMA, the human toll, and the unrelenting pursuit of greatness. Let's dive into Ben Askren's heartbreaking decision, Arman's blistering critique of Ilia and Khamzat, and what these stories tell us about the fight game in 2025. Ben Askren is a man who has been many things: Olympic wrestler, Bellator and ONE championship champion, UFC fighter, podcaster, author, and Twitter troll extraordinaire. But this week, he became something no one expected, a cautionary tale. In a video posted to his social media platforms, Askren stood in his Wisconsin home, holding a framed item, the singlet he wore during the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, embroidered with the American flag. His voice, normally cheeky and sarcastic, trembled slightly as he explained, "I never thought I'd be doing this, but life happens. I've got medical bills from a recent surgery that aren't covered, and it's either swallow my pride or let the debt bury me." Askren explained that despite being a successful athlete and businessman, a combination of insurance issues, a complicated medical procedure, and long-term post-fight health complications have left him with a bill exceeding $140,000. The moment was raw, unfiltered, painful, and it shattered the illusion that successful fighters always ride off into the sunset. How did this happen? The hidden dangers of life after fighting. Askren retired from MMA in 2020 after a brief but unforgettable UFC stint, including a record-setting 5-second KO loss to Jorge Masvidal. Since then, he's worked as a coach, crypto investor, and sports commentator. But behind the scenes, Askren has been battling hip degeneration, chronic joint pain, and neurological issues linked to years of wrestling and MMA. Earlier this year, he underwent a complex spinal fusion procedure to address nerve compression in his neck and upper back. Unfortunately, Askren revealed that due to a clerical error with his insurance provider, a large portion of the procedure and post-op treatment was deemed elective and not eligible for coverage. "I've tried every appeal. I've called everyone. But at the end of the day, they don't care that I took years off my life entertaining people. They just want the check." The auction, a symbol of sacrifice. To raise funds, Askren announced he will be auctioning off several items, with the Olympic singlet being the centerpiece. Other items include his ONE championship belt, a signed pair of gloves from his UFC debut, a handwritten training diary from his college wrestling days, the infamous funky wrestling shoes. Fans and fighters alike have responded with shock and empathy. Michael Chandler, a former opponent and current UFC star, offered to buy the singlet privately and return it to Askren. Joe Rogan mentioned the situation on his podcast, calling it a damn shame. But for Askren, this is about principle. "I'm not asking for pity. I'm showing people what happens when the system forgets you. I'll get through it. That's what wrestlers do." While Askren's story pulled at heartstrings, another narrative unfolded on the opposite end of the emotional spectrum: pure, unfiltered MMA beef. In a fiery interview with MMA Fighting, Arman turned his attention to two of the UFC's most hyped fighters, Ilia, the undefeated featherweight champion, and Khamzat Chimaev, the undefeated Chechen Swede who's been dancing between divisions. Sarukian, fresh off a dominant win over Charles Oliveira, didn't mince words. "Ilia, he beat Volk once and thinks he's a god. Khamzat, That guy's more Instagram model than fighter these days. They are both hype trains. I'm the future. Arman on Ilia. One good fight doesn't make you king. Tsarukyan took particular aim at Ilia Topuria, who knocked out Alexander Volkanovski earlier this year to claim the featherweight title. He beat an old Volkanovski who just got KO'd by Islam. Is lucky. Put him in there with me or Islam, and he drowns. When asked whether he would move down to featherweight to fight Ilia, Arman laughed. Why would I go down? He should come up. Lightweight is where the real killers are. This isn't the first time Arman has targeted Ilia. The two had a backstage encounter in Abu Dhabi last year that ended with words exchanged but no physical contact. Now, Tsarukyan is making it clear he wants that smoke. Arman on Khamzat. He's a myth, and I'll expose him. But Tsarukyan saved his harshest words for Khamzat Chimaev, who's been out of action for months following a mysterious illness that caused the cancellation of multiple bouts. He fights once a year and acts like his champ. He's scared to make weight. He's scared to lose the aura. Arman claimed he offered to fight Khamzat multiple times, but Chimaev's camp declined. Khamzat won't fight real contenders. He wants money fights. I'm not surprised. But when the real fighters take over, he'll disappear. Fans were shocked. Fighters like Justin Gaither and Dan Hooker reacted on social media with popcorn emojis and cryptic comments. Even Henry Cejudo jumped in, saying, Arman's got the skills, and now he's got the mouth. This is getting spicy. Shields Sonnen, this is criminal. A guy who represented his country and fought for fans shouldn't be auctioning his memories. Kamaru Usman, it's a reminder we're not invincible. Take care of your health, and don't trust insurance companies. Valentina Shevchenko, fighters need a union. No more stories like this. On Arman Tsarukyan. Islam Makhachev, Arman talks a lot. Let's see if he keeps winning. Then we'll talk. Ilia Topuria, via Instagram talk is cheap. Lightweight is not for you, little man. Khamzat Chimaev, on Twitter I smashed this clown. Easy fight. Just tell Dana. These two stories, Ben Askren's struggle and Arman Tsarukyan's fury, capture the twin faces of the MMA world. 1. The human cost of combat sports. The pain, the medical bills, the silence that follows retirement. 2. The relentless ambition of the rising generation, who refuse to bow to hype or reputation. Askren's situation reignites the debate around fighter pay, post-career healthcare, and long-term support for veterans of the sport. Meanwhile, Arman's verbal assault signals a new wave of athletes ready to destroy idols and reshape divisions. One is about surviving after glory. The other is about fighting to claim it. And both are equally important. Ben Askren's emotional auction has reignited a firestorm of debate within the MMA community and beyond. If a former Olympic athlete, two-time world champion, and UFC star can end up selling cherished memorabilia to cover a single surgery, what does that say about the system fighters retire into? The UFC's role, praise, profit, and a cold goodbye. The UFC has become the global face of MMA, amassing billions in revenue through pay-per-views, media rights deals, and sponsorships. Its fighters, however, often operate without long-term financial security unless they're elite-level champions or crossover stars like Conor McGregor. Askren wasn't one of Dana White's guys. He arrived late in his career, got fast-tracked into high-stakes fights, and left without fanfare after 3 UFC bouts. And although he's not crying foul, his situation is symbolic of a bigger issue. No fighter retirement fund. No long-term health care program for ex-UFC athletes. No union or collective bargaining power. This isn't about me, Askren said in a follow-up post. This is about what happens when fighters leave the spotlight. We fade, and the bills pile up. Even Nate Quarry, one of the UFC's early stars, weighed in. I needed back surgery. The UFC said I was a contractor, not an employee. So I paid out of pocket. Ben's story is all of us. The Joe Rogan conversation, a national spotlight. The controversy reached a wider audience when Joe Rogan discussed Askren's situation on a recent episode of the Joe Rogan Experience. Ben Askren is a world-class athlete. He's also a coach, a thinker, a builder of men, and yet is auctioning off his Olympic singlet to pay medical debt. That should never happen in this country. Not to anyone, but especially not to someone who gave his body to a sport like that. Rogan also called for fighters to get organized and pushed for some form of retirement benefits, especially for UFC veterans with 5+ fights. It's a conversation that has always bubbled in MMA, but now, with names like Askren involved, it's boiling over. While Askren's situation revealed the sport's cracks, Arman Tsarukyan's emergence as a loud, fearless contender reminded fans why they loved this brutal game in the first place. At just 28, Arman has fought the who's who of the lightweight division. His breakout moment came in a competitive debut against Islam Makhachev, a fight that aged like wine. Since then, he's beaten names like Damir Ismagulov, Mateusz Gamrot, and Charles Oliveira. But it's not just his skill set that's evolved, it's his swagger. He's no longer the humble Armenian-Georgian grappler trying to impress. He's now calling people out by name, and that makes him dangerous. Calling out Ilia Topuria and Khamzat Chimaev is more than just trash talk. It's strategic. 1. Ilia is hot right now. Undefeated. Just KO'd Volkanovski, a crossover star in Spain and Latin America, but is viewed by many as avoiding tough stylistic matchups. 2. Khamzat is still a mystery. Is he a real contender, a part-time fighter, or just a viral phenomenon? Arman's comments force both into the spotlight. And, more importantly, they raise questions. Would Ilia survive against someone with Arman's cardio, grappling, and relentless pressure? Would Khamzat agree to fight someone his size with similar skills? Arman is daring them to answer. UFC matchmakers love this energy. Behind closed doors, UFC officials reportedly loved Arman's interview. Dana White has always pushed fighters to take the MIC and build their own fights. Arman just did that in one interview. And now the world's paying attention. A fight between Arman versus Ilia could be a super fight at 155 pounds. Perfect for a co-main event on a massive card. A fight between Arman versus Khamzat. That's violence with elite technique. A main event-worthy clash of Dagestani-style grappling with modern aggression. Either way, Arman has positioned himself as the guy who doesn't fear hype. He hunts it. Across Reddit, Twitter, and YouTube comment sections, the MMA fanbase is torn, not in a divisive way, but in a way that shows how much they care. On Askren's auction. Heartbreaking. Ben gave us so many memories. He deserves better. This is why we need a union. I'm tired of seeing our warriors fade into financial ruin. Askren sold his soul for this sport. Now he's selling his singlet? This is a crime. Some fans have already started a GoFundMe campaign, but Askren has respectfully declined, reiterating that. I'm not looking for charity. I'm looking to send a message. On Tsarukyan's callouts, Arman just broke the illusion around Khamzat and Ilia. He's a beast and is not afraid to say it. He's got the skills and now the MIC skills too. Future champ energy. Please give us Arman versus Topuria at UFC 309. That would be an instant classic. Even international fans are chiming in, with Eastern European MMA forums buzzing with pride. Armenia, Georgia, Dagestan, we are coming. Arman is our voice. Here's how the next 6 to 12 months could unfold based on current momentum. Ben Askren. After the auction, several wealthy collectors and MMA alumni may help recover the singlet so it returns to Askren's hands. His story might lead to renewed discussions on fighter pensions, retirement funds, and health insurance initiatives. Expect to see him speak more openly, possibly as a guest on major podcasts, college campuses, or athlete panels. Ben may be semi-retired, but his story isn't over. In fact, it might be the start of his most important chapter yet, advocating for fighters who can't speak for themselves. Arman Tsarukyan. Possible Fight 1, Arman versus Topuria, lightweight super fight. A stylistic banger that sells out any European arena. Possible Fight 2, Arman versus Gamrot 2 or Beneil Dariush. A top contender test while he waits for Islam or Khamzat. Dream fight, Arman versus Khamzat Chimaev. If both men keep winning, this could headline a UFC PPV in Abu Dhabi or Saudi Arabia. Dana White has taken notice. Arman just flipped a switch, and the UFC loves when the quiet ones suddenly roar. This week in MMA didn't deliver wild knockouts or belt changes, but it did deliver something far more powerful. We saw Ben Askren, a former champion and Olympian, face his mortality and humility with courage. No theatrics, no spin, just a man doing what he must. We saw Arman, a rising lightweight titan, light a verbal fire under two of the most hyped names in the sport, daring them to rise or fall. And in both stories, we saw the essence of MMA, a sport where the body is currency, a career path that demands self-promotion, grit, and sometimes confrontation, a brotherhood forged in blood and broken bones, and also one still lacking the systems to protect its veterans. Fighting is not just about octagon moments. It's about what happens after the lights go out and before the bell rings. Askren and Tsarukyan, two names now etched on opposite sides of that brutal, beautiful spectrum. One, Ben Askren's auction is a tragic reminder that even high-profile athletes can face financial hardship in retirement, and that MMA still lacks the safety nets of other major sports. Two, Arman Tsarukyan's fiery call-outs of Ilia Topuria and Khamzat Chimaev position him as a no-nonsense disruptor in a sport increasingly dominated by hype and theatrics. 3. The fight game continues to evolve, but its biggest challenges aren't always inside the cage. Sometimes, the greatest battles happen in silence or in press rooms.